Well, you had your own your bands or the band at Satyr, wasn't
Yeah,
it? Back in
yeah,
the '70s,
I did.
was prog,
Yeah, it
bit
was
of
well.
Zepp, Queen, and keyboards.
Well, what it was it was if you can imagine Genesis meets Led Zeppelin, I mean, and Queen. It kind of right. It had a lot of those elements in it. We were the first band in rock and roll history to have a laser show. We knew the guy that developed the technology up at Pasadena Tech. So we're shooting the lasers off of mirrors, which is the first. And then we had our screen behind us, and he did like different designs and things going on during the show. And we had two stages that looked like flying saucers, this huge keyboard rig, like a Keith Emerson keyboard rig. Um, and that keyboard player is Pat Regan, who's gone on to produce Deep Purple. He's working with Ritchie Blackmore on all of his records right now, and he's done Mr. Big, and he produced a Kiss record. And he's a very good friend, and he's called me in for different sessions now and then. But yeah, that was a big deal back then. That was but it wasn't in vogue. Obviously, in that period of time, right then, it was bands like the Knack, the Motels, the Fix, In Excess, that kind of thing was what was going on. And at that time, I also ended up playing with a band called Dubrow, which was Kevin Dubrow from the Randy Rhoads era Quiet Riot. And I started playing bass with him and doing demos. And we started playing for record labels. And finally, we got signed. And a lot of those demos ended up being the Mental Health record, which is why I'm the bass player on Bang Your Head, Don't Want to Let You Go, and I sing on every track on that album. So I
It's
was
the 40th anniversary, isn't it, of the time that you joined Quiet Riot?
Yeah, pretty much.
As they prepare for that Mental Health record. Yeah. Did you have any feeling that album, whilst you were doing it, whilst you were all putting it together, that it would be something of a defining moment for the genre, heavy metal? Because, as we all know, it went on to become the first ever '1 heavy metal album on the Billboard charts, which was a big, big thing.
Yeah, it changed the fabric of the whole music scene where it was like I was saying, it was all the new wave bands that suddenly all the record companies wanted to sign bands with big hair and played hard rock. What I thought personally at the time, I didn't think it would sell 5 copies, let alone 10 million. I mean, only because not because it wasn't good and done well. It's just that music was not in at all. It was like not any more than my prog band was in. It was the same thing. It was like, what, I didn't. In fact, we're listening to the record and the tracks and stuff, and I got into an argument along with the producer with Kevin about doing "Come On Feel the Noise," and he just was very resistant to it. He didn't want to do any outside material, and I said, Kevin, really seriously, sit back. Do you hear anything that you would think is a CHR hit song? And CHR is contemporary hit radio, something that's going to be on pop radio station. Do you hear anything that can make this? And I go, seriously, this song at least has a super catchy chorus, and we're talking about it. It's a Slade song. A lot of people think it was a Quiet Riot song, but it's not. It's a Slade song. But he succumbed, and look, sure enough, that's the song that blew open the doors for everybody, for all the rock bands like Rat, Cinderella. The list goes on. They would not have happened if it would for that song. Who knows what would have happened? I don't really know. Maybe somebody else would have come up with something in that genre, and it'd be the new thing, but we killed off.
It was very melodic, wasn't it, at the time? It was all AOR, FM, with the odd exception, Van Halen, who Quiet Riot played with. I saw at a place called the Glendale Community College.
Yeah, I actually saw Van Halen before they got signed, playing at a club that we all played called the Starwood, which was a very popular club back then.
Yeah.
And I remember, and they had 30 people in the audience. And I remember thinking to myself, this stays, when somebody becomes super famous, you remember the first time you saw them. And anyway, this stayed with me. I'm watching them going, wow, this singer is completely ripping off Jim Dandy. He's doing every shtick that Jim Dandy does. And I know Jim Dandy because my sister was dating one of the guitar players. My older sister, was dating one of the guys. So I saw that band come to LA, try to get a record deal. And I went to a bunch of their shows. And when I saw David Lee Roth, I just go, God, he's ripping off. But I go, but wait a minute, this guitar player's amazing, So Eddie just was blowing me away. And Michael Anthony's vocals were killer. I go, wow, this, it's a really good band, except for that guy. I've never been a David Lee Roth fan, although he is a great performer, and he took elements. I mean, people borrow from everybody, I guess, but I mean, he was a clone. Even the way he looked, everything about it, the way he dressed, his rap, hot nasty, it was the same thing. It was like a carbon copy of Jim Dandy. But anyway, that was my impression.
I was going to say, were you guys aware at the time of what was going on in the UK? Because while it was all very melodic before Quiet Riot broke it, over in Europe, in the UK in particular, they had the new wave of British heavy metal, the likes of Diamond Head, Iron Maiden, obviously.
Yeah.
Were you guys fully aware of those bands?
Well,
I know you went on to tour with Maiden on the Number of the Beast tour.
I was a fan of Judas Priest. I know, back then when I was younger, a huge fan of that. I was never really into heavy metal like that. I did see Iron Maiden open for UFO when I was a kid, which was great. But I never was like super into the super heavy metal stuff. That's not even though I can play it. And, I did Impolitary, which is pretty heavy, and Blackthorn, which is heavy. Some albums that I've done were pretty heavy, but it's not my thing, really. Again, back to what I just put in this new album that just came out today, by the way. That's what I'm about musically, more so. Although I got to tell you, I enjoy playing hard rock live. It's like you just go for it, and it's intense, and it's fun, and it's crazy, and the crowds are crazy, and it's a great time. I've been over to Europe a lot, and those audiences are just insane. It's hard to describe the energy that you're getting back when you're on stage with a crowd like that. It's just amazing.
I mean, who you guys were mixing with was at the time in the early 80s with Quiet Riot, when Mental Health came out, was just a who's who of rock royalty. I mean, I mentioned Iron Maiden. You went on the Black Sabbath, the Born Again tour, which had Gillan on.
Well,
and I don't know whether you ever heard this, but Gillan had some very, very funny things to say about that time. First of all, the Stonehenge set, where they had instances of small people falling off these fake Stonehenge stones, and him pinning the lyrics to the bottom of the stage because he didn't know all the songs, not realizing how much dry ice was coming up off the stage, and so he had to keep disappearing.
I did tour with Deep Purple, so I did the Perfect Strangers tour with Jafria. We opened up from there. But that's a great story. I didn't know about the Stonehenge thing.
It is Spinal Tap, if you ever wonder where it came from. And by the way, I don't know whether you saw in the music news they're doing a sequel to Spinal Tap.
I have, and they could use an incident that happened when I was touring with Alice Cooper. There's a part in the show where he's in a straitjacket, and they drag him out of this chair, and they throw him into a guillotine. And the drummer at the time is Eric Singer from Kiss, and he's doing that brrr, bop, brrr, bop. Like the execution's about to start. The executioner's there with the hood, and he's holding the rope, and he yells, "Die!" Drops the guillotine. It stops halfway, and the head falls off. And they hurriedly rushed him off. And Alice also, he does a bit where during the show he's building, there's this tube, and he takes body parts that are all over the stage and the head that came off, and he builds basically him inside this tube and closes it up. And then there's the drum solo. Everybody goes off stage. The tube fills up. We're all ready to go with smoke. The tube fills up with smoke. He gets in that tube, but it didn't open. He couldn't get out. He was in there.
That's Spinal Tap.